So, all right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to Dr. Mulder. And Dr. Mulder, it's such a pleasure to have you here with us today. You wear so many very, very important hats here in our community, and especially within the area of palliative medicine. So we had talked about this a little bit last month with Dr. Jason Backrow, but for anyone who is new, could you touch upon the concept of palliative medicine just so that people can better understand what it is, and then also how you came to specialize in that area?
Sure, quite, briefly, palliative medicine is a subspecialty of medicine. You all have had interactions with the healthcare system. You have primary care physicians, and you have specialist physicians, your cardiologist, gastroenterologist, your orthopods and such. Palliative medicine is just another subspecialty of medicine. Our focus is on the relief of suffering and the improvement of the quality of life for people that are living with life-defining illnesses. So let me say that again. The relief of suffering and the improvement of the quality of life for people who have been living with life-defining illnesses. So something has come your way, and you say, I didn't ask for this, I didn't want this, but now this is part of my story. And this illness may indeed result in some limitations in your life. It might be some symptom burden. It might be a life-limiting illness where with this diagnosis we know that life now is short, much shorter than we wanted it to be. And there might be some functional or disabling aspects of this disease. Palliative medicine is the specialty that helps you navigate that, walks along with you, doesn't replace any physicians. If you have, for example, Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS, you're still going to be seeing your neurologist and your ALS team, but you could have a palliative physician walking alongside you to make sure that you're functioning as best as possible, that you're experiencing the things in life that are important to you. We are often mistaken for hospice. We work very closely with our hospice partners. We grew out of the hospice industry, quite frankly. But hospice is very, very specifically limited to end-of-life care. Palliative medicine can be provided at any point in time during the trajectory of an illness. So as far as how I got into it, through the back door, quite frankly. My dad was diagnosed with cancer when I was in med school and died a year to the day later, 5 days before my graduation from med school. So my entire fourth year of med school was dealing with my dad's declining health. And it was a very, very difficult time for the family. He was diagnosed in '79, died in 1980. We didn't have hospices back then. I'm not even sure the word palliative medicine had been invented yet. All I knew is that this was a very, very difficult time. He suffered, we suffered as a family. A lot of questions that were raised. And as I walked across the stage and took that diploma, I just kept thinking, there's got to be a better way. So I go into residence here in Grand Rapids. In 1983, went to practice in Muskegon. And about a year or two into practice, I was asked to serve on the board of directors of a new hospice that was forming there, which is now Harbor Hospice. And I had some bandwidth, so I joined on. I said, I'll be happy to do that. And that's when I first began learning about hospice, and I became very connected with the model of care and the philosophy of care, providing a dignified death to those that are suffering with things that we can't fix. So they ultimately asked me to serve as their medical director, and that was my first, so I was doing part-time hospice work alongside my full-time family medicine practice. I would go to conferences and would connect with people that did what I did on the hospice side. And we sort of figured that there was an opportunity to establish ourselves as a unique specialty. So we began those efforts in the late 80s and the early 90s, and by 1997 had formed the American Board of Hospice and Palliative Medicine, in which physicians could be board certified in hospice and palliative medicine. And in 2000, I went into it full time. I went down to Nashville, Tennessee, and worked down there, taught at Vanderbilt University, and started some programs down there in Nashville for about 6 years until Gravity Rapids pulled me back. And was recruited by Holland Home, who some of you may be familiar with here in town, to help them with their hospice development. But we also then developed palliative care programs. I worked with systems here and helped develop a program at Spectrum and at Metro, and I realized that all the hospital systems have changed their name. I'm sorry, but I still kind of stick with the originals. I'm still Butterworth. I haven't really gotten used to Spectrum yet, let alone Corwell. And I trained at St. Mary's. I'm sorry, then was Mercy, and now it's Trinity. And anyway, so, but I started the programs at what is now Corwell and what is now University of Michigan Health West, started a training program for physicians who want to specialize in this, and we run that out of Trinity Health. So it's been a really wonderful trajectory in terms of just doing that, but it really probably was my experience with my dad, recognizing this is so wrong, and there's got to be a better way.
I love that idea of recognizing the need and figuring out how to meet that need and then how that can evolve over time. A lot like GR Savvy Seniors, I would say. So statistics show us that the demographics of the whole world are changing. And with so many people living longer, it's not uncommon to see multi-generations that are needing some assistance in life. And how have you experienced this in the medical industry, and what do you see as the ramifications of this as time goes on?
That's a challenging question. The first time that I really remember a really tangible evidence of this was when I was at our hospice facility, and there was a gentleman who was dying. He was very close to the end of his life, and his parents were at the side of his bed, as you would expect parents grieving that they're about to lose their child. That's not the way the world is supposed to be, right? But it happens all the time. The things that was unique about this is that the gentleman in the bed was 77 years old, and his parents were 99 and 100. Okay? And yet there they were, experiencing exactly the same emotions that a 30-year-old parent losing their 6-year-old child would be experiencing. Now, at 99 and 100, they had their issues as well. So we were, our team was helping to meet their needs as they were managing the grief of losing their son. I think that as technology changes, it becomes very, very complicated because there are more and more things that we can do to extend life. And that's a wonderful thing in many circumstances. It's not so wonderful in other circumstances. And so we see people in every generation, at every age, and it really seems that the younger the patient is, the more tragedy surrounds the fact that this is so unfair. And therefore, the medical care system steps up its interventions, and it may or may not help to deliver good quality care. It may or may not help to allow someone to live longer. I will tell you that at every age group, I see people who have been saddled with medical interventions that will do nothing to either preserve their life or to help make them better. Just one really quick example of that. I was asked to see a young man in the hospital. He was in the ICU, and this was August of whatever year it was, and he had been injured in April, so 4 months earlier, in a bicycle accident, and he'd had massive, massive head trauma. They had removed a plate from the skull to allow the swelling. He never regained consciousness. He never came off the ventilator, but he had multiple complications. They would stabilize him. He would go to a long-term care facility. He would get an infection. He'd be back to the hospital. They would stabilize him. He'd go back to the long-term care facility, back and forth, back and forth. And so now he's back in the hospital, again, always in the ICU because he was on the ventilator, couldn't get off of that. Never, ever regained even an ounce of consciousness, and never would because of the extent of his brain damage. I remember sitting at the bedside with his mother and his sister and his brother. And this young man was in his 20s. And the brother and the sister both worked in healthcare. And the brother looked at me and said, "This is what the medical care system has done to him. He died 4 months ago. Why are we still doing all of this?" So in palliative medicine, what I do, and I've done this with everyone from neonates, pediatric side, to the oldest, to say, let's take a look at, first of all, what is the reality of the medical situation? Is this something that is going to provide value and benefit to a patient or not? And what is sacred to you? If the patient has the capacity to answer that, great. If it's the family that I'm asking that to, what is sacred to you? What is sacred to him or to her? Because my job is to make sure that everything we do centers around what is important and of greatest value to the patient in the bed. So that we're not doing things that make no difference, but we're doing things that bring richness and value and support what it is that it's important to them. And I won't get, because I could tell stories all day of how that plays out in real life.
And he actually does on a really amazing podcast that he has too. So I'm just going to...
And we're going to plug that too?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's called Palliative Matters, and it is available anywhere you stream your podcasts. So.
Thank you. See? I'm all about marketing.
Yeah.
So, how has working with patients and their families in palliative care influenced your life view of things like success and happiness?
Wow, you write some really great questions, Laura, but didn't make it easy on us.
Absolutely.
Well, I can remember very, very early on seeing the relationships that I envied. I didn't have that kind of a relationship with a fill in the gap, with a parent, a sibling, or a spouse. And I remember that, going back many, many years, my focus was always on, when I see that, what is it that makes that situation unique, and how can I be a better, fill in the blank, husband, brother, father, son? And so I would say that the brevity of life becomes very, very real. The preciousness of life becomes very, very real. And so the area of focus on what we focus on changes. I would also have to say that I've had my own interesting intersections with the medical care system. Now, without going into too much gruesome detail, it's just more interesting. A few years ago, I had a terminal lung disease that was diagnosed, and so that began influencing how I viewed life, happiness, success. And, we talk about travel. I love to travel too. I've been to 49 states. Never made it to Hawaii. Okay. I know you can get me there. So, so one might say that it's on my bucket list. Okay? So now I'm saddled with a terminal disease. How important is it for me to see Hawaii? At that point in time, I had a kid in Seattle, I had a kid in San Francisco, kid in Denver, a kid in Nashville. Those seemed a little more important destinations for me than Hawaii, although I'm sure it's a beautiful place. Then this past April, I suffered, again in medical terminology, it's called an aortic dissection, which is a pretty daunting thing. If any of you are in medicine, usually people just drop their jaw a little bit. Most of the people that suffer a dissection don't make it to the hospital. Those that do, the majority don't survive the surgery for it. So I'm extraordinarily fortunate to be able to be here. So success and happiness, how do I define that? God has given us all talents that we use for His glory and we use for the purposes of making life better for those around us. I feel very fortunate that I get to do what I enjoy doing. I'm here this morning not because of any reason other than I wanted to be here. Laura had asked me. I said, that sounds like a fun and interesting thing that I would enjoy doing. I would enjoy the audience. And so I do it because there's going to be, when I, every night, the last night before I go to bed, I chronicle 3 good things that happened to me today. And number 1 is always my wife and the donor family. Number 2, then, and 3 are the things, and this is going to be probably number 2 on my list. The day's only half over, so I don't know what number 3 is going to be yet.
I'm very happy to have made that list for sure. So building on that idea of how our life roles really tend to define us, how would you counsel a patient, especially those of us that might be just a little type A, who can no longer physically do the things that have always brought them that joy and that purpose in their life?
It's not only that it brought them joy and purpose, unfortunately, and it is unfortunate, it is how many people define their value and their worth as a person in terms of what they do, okay? And this, it might sound trite, but you matter because of who you are, not what you do. And just by virtue of being, you have value in this world. And you have the opportunity to be able to share and radiate love, hope, promise, even in what seem to be desperate circumstances. I remember I walked into a room in our inpatient hospice unit once, and there was a woman there who was particularly, she was a bright light in everybody's life. You walk in, she's smiling, she greets everybody, and she lifts the mood for those around her. She had a very rare type of a lung cancer that was progressive, and it restricted her, so she had a very, very difficult time breathing. She couldn't get out of bed anymore. She needed help with everything, with eating, even turning, toileting, everything she needed help with. And I walked in one day and I said, I noticed that she seemed a little sour. She was frowning and just didn't seem to have the same spark that she usually did. And I said, what's going on? She said, so I just realized this is it for me. This is all I'm going to be able to do. And what is the purpose of me being here if I'm just lying in bed and having to depend on everybody for all these things? And I said, well, you don't appreciate the difference you've made in the world around you, that you make every day. Someone comes in to empty the trash, and you greet them, and you smile at them. Their day has changed because of the light that you have brought into their lives. When someone comes in, your attitude, and everybody loves coming into your room because you share joy with them. I can't think of anything more important in life than that. The fact that you're in the bed is irrelevant because that's what you're able to do because of who you are. And I think it's important to get caught up in what I can't do anymore, and I can't do the things that used to define me as a person, but there's still great value in who God made you and the love that you still have that you can very, very easily pass on to someone else simply by smiling at them. It's amazing how far that goes.
Well, and that really leads us right into our next question, that you and your wife have 8 children and now 13 grandchildren. God bless you, by the way.
Well,
3.
at the last, I don't know.
I was going to say 3 about did me in.
I haven't checked my texts while we've been up here. It could be 14 now. I don't know.
Well, how have your life roles as a husband, a father, a grandfather really compared to the satisfaction of all of your professional accomplishments?
Well, I don't know that I can grade them. I mean, the stock answer that everyone would expect, well, of course, my roles as a father and a husband and a grandfather clearly are the most important roles that I play. That would be the sort of stock answer. And I would never, ever, ever diminish the joy that I find in those roles. But to know that someone is experiencing moments at the end of life where they're finding joy where they didn't find it before, where they are now at a sense of peace, that it's okay to die, that they are right with God, and that we've had a role in helping to navigate that process so they can understand their position, to see the relief on their face when their pain is gone. There's really quite nothing like that. And so I've been extraordinarily blessed to be able to what I would claim to be successful as a physician because of how my patients have died. And, I had a doc come up to me once and said, boy, I admire what you do. I could never work in a specialty where all my patients died. And I waited for a second to see if he would appreciate the idiocy of what he just told me. And he didn't. So I said, I'd be curious to shadow you someday and meet some of these patients who are never going to die. He says, oh, you know what I mean. And I said, well, unfortunately I do. And that's the attitude a lot of people have relative to death and dying. The docs want to ignore that. Hang on a second, someone's calling. Okay. Not one of the kids, so I'm not going to take it. And the other thing is that, the last I checked, all of my patients are still living, okay? And it's an attitudinal thing that we're not looking at dying as the process. We're looking at how do we live in the midst of having something we know we can't fix. There may be a shorter lifespan. I have a very short lifespan based on my lung transplant. I didn't tell you that. I said I had this terminal lung disease. I forgot to tell you the other point. I had a lung transplant. But that gives me a shortened lifespan. Having had an aortic dissection shortens my lifespan. And so the question is not when am I going to die or am I dying? The question is how do I want to live between today and whenever that comes. I hope it's a long time off, but I don't know. You're all going to be facing that, by the way. 90% of you will be given a diagnosis or a circumstance that you know is going to be on a death certificate. We just don't know when. So the question is, how do you want to live between now and then? A lot of life to live. And for many of you, you need to see Eric because there's some life you want to live that he can help you with. Yeah, definitely need to talk to Kevin because he's got some answers for you if you're still are curious about where you fit into God's plan for your life. So I'll stop there.
Well, I feel like you pretty much covered my next question, so we're going to move into kind of a special...
You want me to do that now?
Yeah, I think so. So we've got kind of a special treat for you today. So I said this was going to be a little bit like a coffee house too. So our wonderful, amazing Dr. Mulder also performs. So he's going to sing a song for us.
Yes, it's I have been writing and performing for 55 years or so. And I have found in recent years that it is the songwriting that really helps me communicate things that are in my heart that I want to get out. I don't play out much anymore. I used to do a lot. I still write and still record. But those songs pretty much exist on my hard drive. Because I don't know what to do with them, quite frankly. These kids talk about, I don't know, I put it out here, put it out there. I don't know what that means. So anyway, so this is a song that I just wrote within the last couple of weeks. so I just wanted to share this thought. Sometimes things may go my way, other time peace fades away. I think I'm trying to do what's right, make the sun break through the cloud. Love my kids, love my wife, I've had to suffer a share in life. I guess it's something we all must bear, knowing that life's not always fair. It's hard to let the past be past, and not let bad memories last. With an eye on tomorrow, but living for today. More blessings than burdens, less sorrow than joy. More blessings than burdens, less sorrow than joy. I get love from this old guitar, that's not where all mercies are. God and family and friends, it's where true meaning starts and ends. It's where true meaning starts and ends. It's hard to let the past be past, and not let bad memories last. With an eye on tomorrow, living for today. More blessings than burdens, less sorrow than joy. More blessings than burdens, less sorrow than joy. More blessings than burdens, less sorrow than joy. More blessings than burdens, less sorrow than joy.